Disney is taking a billion-dollar dive into artificial intelligence. The media giant announced they were investing $1 billion in OpenAI and licensing characters from popular franchises like Star Wars, Marvel, and Pixar for use in the new Sora AI video generator. For more on what this means for the industry, I'm joined by Mark Jones. He's the Dean of the Faculty of Animation and Arts and Design at Sheridan College. Great to have you here. You guys were my first thought when I saw this headline.
Thank you.
I guess first off, let's start with your impressions. How did you react when you saw this?
Honestly, it wasn't much of a surprise because we knew that OpenAI was in discussions with entertainment executives and that Disney was very clear that what it was interested in was the protection and the proliferation of its IP in a way that it could control. So I think when you put those factors together, we saw the kind of announcement that we saw last week.
I have a very basic understanding, so I hope you can fill in the gaps for me. What I understand this means is now essentially Disney doesn't necessarily need all those animators they used to create those characters because they can scrape them and regenerate them with AI. Is that
That is, I think, one of the beliefs that are out there. But the reality is, if you actually take a look at the limits that they put on this licensing deal for OpenAI, what they're really doing is pivoting to appeal to the fan base, because what they're interested in is seeing how do the fan base actually use these tools to create their own clips, their own short films, but there are limitations. So for example, there's no voices involved. You cannot use anything that includes a human likeness. So there's quite a number of limits put on the arrangement, because I think what Disney's really interested in is how are people going to use these tools for things that they could then port over to Disney Plus, because they've said they're going to curate a certain amount of this content to see are people actually interested in watching AI-generated content. So I think this is a bit of a testing phase for Disney, and we'll see how it plays out.
Well, how will this, from your lens, potentially change the industry? What does this do?
From my perspective, it's a testing phase for Disney. It doesn't necessarily change anything in terms of production pipelines. And I think you cannot, for example, prompt your way towards a film like K-pop Demon Hunters or even an episode of Paw Patrol. So at Sheridan, we're very interested. We're keeping a close eye on this technology. But we haven't seen anything in talking to our industry partners or the studios that actually hire our grads. This suggests that the tools are actually working their way into production pipelines in a way that is anything more than experimentation and a testing phase at this point.
Because you guys are the entry point for so many people who have gone on to do so many things, like Maggie, for example, who was just here talking K-pop Demon Hunters. I mean, you've had so many people go through the school. How are you pivoting your courses, and what are you telling your students coming in about this animation world that they are going to graduate into?
Absolutely. This is, and obviously this is a concern for Sheridan because we've been doing this for a long time.
You guys are one of the main pools that they pull from.
Absolutely, and we were the first program within Canada, and we're still ranked the top in the country. So how do we do that? We do that by actually listening to our industry partners, listening to the studios that hire our grads. And so our impression at this point is that we need to continue to look at where things are changing, and we need to adapt some of our programming. So for example, last week we just announced our brand new four-year degree called 3D Animation and Emerging Technology. And this is a program where students come in and they actually learn their passion for 3D animation in the way that Sheridan is known for, but they'll also be able to learn how those skills are being used in other fields across the economy, such as healthcare or architecture or urban planning. So we think that this is the way of the future.
I know Disney is saying this is sort of a test model to see how consumers enjoy their AI experience, but I think we already know that. I mean, people are already ingesting AI content online or on their social medias, and they believe it, and they're sharing it.
I think there's an impression that because you can prompt your way towards something that looks very realistic, that is a substitute for storytelling, and storytelling done by a crew of professionals that are well-trained in that, they're well-practiced in it. But we've also seen a bit of a backlash with respect to some AI content. So for example, last week we know that McDonald's had to pull a commercial that was airing in the Netherlands because of backlash and the fact that it was used with generative AI. So we're in very much a bit of a discovery phase with this right now. And I think it's going to be important for Disney to capture that viewer data on Disney Plus when they port this content over, because one of the things that in my view is not talked about enough is how do audiences actually respond to purely AI-generated content? Is it something that they will view in the same way that they view a really well-crafted story in the way that we've been doing as a species for millions of years?
But right now we tell people that it's generative AI, right? There's that expectation that we want to know. What about when they just decide to stop telling us and you don't know?
Well, I think then at that point it's really up to the regulators, and it's actually up to government to be able to indicate to us what kinds of content we're actually watching, because if we're in a position where we're moving towards purely automated storytelling, then in my mind, it's a little bit like saying that just because you have a hammer, it makes you a carpenter. The tool itself does not actually make you the artist. Being able to practice your craft and learn it from a host of other artists is really where good storytelling from a human perspective comes from.
I can feel like that's where you guys are going to focus. Mark Jones, Dean of the Faculty of Animation, Arts, and Design at Sheridan College. I'm so glad you came in today. I'm so curious what your perspective was.
Thanks, Anne-Marie.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.